What's your first reaction when you see this picture? Is it what a lovely couple, or they look happy together? Or is it this, or this?
Asian dudes just suck.
Asian men are generally perceived as unattractive.
Japanese.
What's wrong with being an Asian guy?
Sometimes, I'm blown away by the amount of racism.
Why do Asian men get so much hate? How come no one cares? And what can Asian men do about it? These are the questions we'll be answering today, and it's actually an interesting topic because it's not as simple as racism or jealous incels. There are several unique factors that work together to enable and normalize hate against Asian men. And one of those factors is actually hate from Asian women.
I don't mean to be racist against my own race, but
Asian men are generally perceived as unattractive.
Everybody but Asian guys.
If you are not Asian, you might not be aware there is a special military operation going on between some Asian women and all Asian men. This operation was launched by a special type of Asian women called Aunty Lus. Aunty Lus are Asian women who love to hate on Asian men for no reason. They proactively make fun of Asian men any opportunity they get.
And people are always like, you don't like Asian guys? I'm like, no, I like regular people.
They spread negative generalizations about all Asian men.
They're slobs, they just watch anime all day, play video games all day, and you're an incel.
They perpetuate negative racial stereotypes about Asian men.
Japanese penis, American penis.
They will blame all Asian men when one Asian man does something wrong.
I was raised with an older brother, and so I am very, very cognizant of the fact that I was raised differently than he was.
They will always mention they don't date Asian men,
I'm not into Asian guys.
even if no one asks. And when people do ask, look how proud they are saying they don't date Asian men.
Kind of have a no dating Asian sort of policy. You kind of look a bit like my brother.
Which is hilarious because they also get mad at non-Asian women who like Asian guys.
Is there any celebrity that you like?
There is some Korean.
Korean again? You are. I don't know why it's so weird. I'm just like.
There are even YouTube channels which have collected hours of footage showing Asian women talking trash about Asian men. Usually when Asian guys bring up this issue, people will gaslight us by saying, "You're overreacting, stop being jealous, who cares who Asian women want to date?" The answer is no one cares. The issue is not about dating preferences. There is a massive difference between saying I prefer to date black or white guys versus saying I don't date Asian men because they are too effeminate, too traditional, or whichever negative stereotype they want to perpetuate. It's like me saying I usually find white or black or whatever women more attractive versus I don't date Asian women because they are too reserved or submissive. In fact, if I did say that, people would call me a racist and misogynist. But because of society's double standards, Aunty Lus can say whatever they like about Asian men, largely without consequences. It's actually so socially accepted, they are screaming about it on national television.
I have a no dating Asian policy as well.
It's bizarre. I mean, imagine if a black woman went on national television and said she had a no dating black guys policy. Everyone would be outraged. So why do Aunty Lus hate Asian men so much? You may have noticed most Aunty Lus are westernized Asian women. And one reason why they talk down Asian men is because they think it improves their chances of dating white men. Most Aunty Lus also suffer from internalized racism.
You had this really weird inferiority complex where you put white people on a pedestal. You refused to engage with your culture, and you thought Asian men were gross.
But instead of working on overcoming their own negative beliefs about Asians, they decided to take their anger out on Asian men instead. Figuring out why they hate on Asian men is not nearly as important as being aware they are doing it and acknowledging they are getting away with it. This is harmful because behavior that is unchallenged becomes normalized. And unfortunately, all the negative narratives about Asian men being spread by Asian women will be assumed to be true by the majority of non-Asians, simply because an Asian person is saying it. Let's discuss how we can empower ourselves later, because right now we must talk about Boba Liberals. Boba Liberals are basically Asians who really want to be white, and they are so desperate for white validation they take on the ideologies of white liberals while also actively downplaying real issues faced by Asians. For example, Boba Liberals will support, even champion movements like Black Lives Matter and anti-war protests, but they will never speak up about anti-Asian hate crimes. They will make videos and write articles about anti-blackness in the Asian community while ignoring the high rates of black on Asian crime. In fact, if you even dare mention the numbers, then you are a racist.
What?
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Boba liberals will claim Asians are white adjacent, while ignoring data showing societal discrimination against Asians for being Asian. And when people are racist towards Asians, they won't stand up for Asians. Instead, they'll say, actually, Asians are the most racist people on the planet. And what's really funny is, now we have the growing feminism and anti-patriarchy movements. Society has been going after privileged men in positions of power, which in many cases is justified. However, Boba liberals have managed to drag Asian men into that group as well. What privileges are we talking about? All these combine to create the narrative that all the hate Asian men receive is deserved. That's why whenever we bring up the challenges we face, we are always dismissed. When we voice our concerns about hate crimes, we are told to stop being victims. When we point out the lack of positive Asian male representation in Western media, we get told we are insecure. When we call out blatant racism against Asians, we get called snowflakes. When we highlight double standards in society, somehow we are told we are the ones who are racist. And when we physically defend ourselves against violence, somehow we are the ones who get in trouble. That's why Boba liberals can often be more harmful than blatant racists, so don't let them get away with it. Now, it's important to remember Asian men didn't become everyone's punching bags overnight. Mainstream Western media has been demonizing Asian men since the early 1900s. We have always been labeled a threat to white jobs, white women, the white way of life, the enemy, foreign invaders. It doesn't matter which Asian country you are from.
Have you ever been associated or affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party?
No, Senator. Again, I'm Singaporean.
Or if you are a third-generation Asian American.
You're this Chinese like trying to gain up on me or something.
All Asians in the West suffered when Japan was the enemy. Just like all Asians were punished because a virus originated in China. Just like all Asians will be considered CCP if conflict between China and America escalates. Asian men don't have the luxury of being treated like individuals. In early Hollywood, we were villains. From the 60s onwards, we became laughingstocks, emasculated clowns, incompetent fools and exaggerated stereotypes, or just flat out erased altogether. Here are just some quick examples. In 2021, a movie based on a true story, the real-life Asian main character was replaced by a white actor. In The Last Airbender, all non-white heroes were replaced with white people, while non-white villains remained unchanged. The Last Samurai, a white guy goes to Japan, trains for a few weeks, and pretty much saves Japan. The Forbidden Kingdom, white guy saves China from evil. Romeo Must Die, ending showing Jet Li and Leia kissing changed to hugging because Western directors didn't want to offend Western audiences. 47 Ronin, the one white guy saves the princess. Dragon Ball Evolution, Goku played by a scrawny white guy. 16 Candles featured the Long Dark Dawn, the personification of the emasculated Asian stereotype. Breakfast at Tiffany's, one of the most celebrated movies in American history, featured a racist Asian caricature played by a white actor in yellowface. Two Broke Girls, a show that featured a joke character, where the joke is literally that he's an emasculated Asian guy. The Interview, white guys go to poor Asian country to make fun of Asian men and have intercourse with Asian women. Tokyo Drift, Hollywood execs try to change the only positive Asian male character to a black guy, which director Justin Lin fought against. And of course, every single movie or television show with Ken Jeong or Bobby Lee in them. Quite literally, most Asian characters in Western media are jokes for people to laugh at. All these negative stereotypes result in very real challenges Asian men must overcome simply for committing the crime of being an Asian man. But that's not all. We all know in Western society, there are double standards in terms of who you can be racist to. This is socially acceptable.
Oh, my dad rock this, he always...
This is also fine.
Mr. Saad, I'm sorry for your loss, but you'll live.
I take care of all the fighters as well as employees.
So is this. And this.
I'll make you hungry.
And this. And just imagine a similar headline about a non-Asian athlete being approved. It would never happen. They would be fired right away. I mean, let's be real here. Do you think people would be able to get away with mocking a more protected minority group the same way they mock Asian men? Western society has been conditioned to treat Asian men as inferior punching bags for over 100 years. So it's no surprise we still see this kind of response to popular franchises casting Asian male lead characters, even in 2024. And what's What's even less surprising is hate against Asian men is also rampant on social media. Every time you see content of Asian men doing well in life, the comments are always full of racist attacks. And if you see content of Asian boys playing sport, it's CCP propaganda, of course. Asian men dating non-Asian women, that's right, rage and racism. Asian athletes following their dreams, racist jokes and stereotypes. And of course, who could forget the viral video formula of Asian OnlyFans girls talking about Asian men?
What's one race you laddies wouldn't date?
Asian.
Not to mention all the videos of insecure non-Asian men trying to make Asian men look bad for clout, I guess. And if any Asian man dares to speak up, they will face dismissive whataboutisms like, actually, Asians are the most racist. Oh, it's just a joke, don't be so sensitive. Or, oh, you're just a snowflake. Or, so what, people are racist against Mexicans and black people too. Can we just talk about that for a second? How bizarre is it that people justify racism against Asians because they are also racist towards other minorities? Hey moron, why don't you just stop being racist towards everyone? What's worse is there will always be a few self-hating Asians who defend this type of behavior on social media. Their comments will always be weaponized against anyone who tries to challenge hate because, see, that person is Asian and they don't mind. Clearly, it's not a big deal, chill out. Which is like saying there is no racism against black people because Candace Owens said so, which is nonsensical, but unfortunately, this form of gaslighting works on most people. Now yes, a lot of hate against Asian men on social media is from racist incels. And I know it can be very easy to dismiss all the hate on social media and say, well, what do you expect? It's social media. But social media is a reflection of societal norms. And we should be asking why hate is so normalized in society. And for us Asian men, we have to figure out how to fight back. Because if the status quo is hate and racism against us, then positive change will never happen by itself. Let's talk about a very interesting case study. Around May 2024, there was a lot of controversy around a game called Assassin's Creed Shadows, which initially doesn't seem like a big deal, but the entire discourse that happened around it perfectly illustrates how little people care about Asian men. Basically, in all previous Assassin's Creed games, you played as a protagonist from the region the game is set in. You were an Italian in Italy, a Syrian in Syria, a Native American during colonial America, a Welshman during the golden age of piracy, a Frenchman in France, a Greek in Greece, English twins in England, an Egyptian in Egypt, a Viking in Norway, and now in Shadows, a black samurai in Japan. Wait, what?
Why do they pick Yasuke? Because he's black.
Kind of questionable playing as a black guy in Japan slaughtering Asians. But wait, it gets even better. When people started asking, hey, why can't we play as a Japanese male main character in a game set in feudal Japan? I mean, every game before this one, you could play as a regional male hero. Is this another case of erasing Asian men from Western media? Which are fair questions to be asking. But asking those questions caused people to be accused of being racist towards black people and banned from social media platforms. That's right, if you want an Asian male hero in a game set in Japan, you are a racist. Even though Asian men are extremely underrepresented in Western media. Look, if you still don't get it, it has nothing to do with being anti-black and everything to do with advocating for Asian men who are also minorities. The fact this entire situation has been framed as an argument between racists who don't like black people versus people who support diversity shows how little people care about Asian men. We don't even exist. And this entire joke of a situation gets even funnier. Not a single Asian man was on the writing team that worked on Assassin's Creed Shadows, and the Japanese culture consultant they hired was an Asian woman married to a white guy who wrote books about Buddhist monks having romantic relationships with teenage boys. What in the actual You can't even make this up. Bloody hell, what did Asian men do to you people? Did everyone get rejected by Asian guys in high school or something? Oh, by the way, people also tried to gaslight Asian men by saying, but you can play as an Asian female. There's your representation. Which is like saying black women have good representation because there are many fantastic black male actors. And this logical fallacy is always used to justify the lack of positive Asian male representation in Western media. Which is why, like I said, I can understand why people don't think this Assassin's Creed thing is a big deal when they view it in isolation. But when you consider the context of over 100 years of Asian men being erased, dehumanized and humiliated, then it becomes a big deal. And let's be honest, we are also responsible for the situation we're in. Historically, we haven't been very vocal about the challenges we face. We are raised to show respect to people who don't always deserve it. We are told to be the bigger person, to turn the other cheek. And because we tend to suffer in silence, we don't receive the same support as other marginalized groups, which makes it even harder for Asian men to speak up. And that's why the actions of the following Asian men have arguably resulted in the greatest normalization of anti-Asian hate. That's right, we are talking about self-hating Asian men, also known as Uncle Chans. They are people who, for a variety of reasons, have been raised to hate being Asian and believe that Asian men are inferior. They enable other people to be racist towards Asians.
Tell me, oh girl, you know Bobby H.
They perpetuate racist Asian stereotypes and mock their heritage to entertain Western audiences.
Nobody use tomato for Thai red curry.
They downplay racism.
Why you eat that fat? Why you eat that fat?
Except when it happens to them.
Nobody stepped in.
Yeah, why?
And worst of all, they are used to justify racism against Asians. Because hey, if people like Uncle Roger can make fun of Asians, then I can too, right? It would be like me saying I can say the N-word because Chris Rock said it a million times in a popular skit, even though he himself stopped doing it to avoid it being normalized.
Every time black people want to have a good time, some ignorant ass I take care of my kids. Always want credit for something they're supposed to do.
Imagine being a young Asian boy growing up in Western society, constantly being mocked for being Asian, being told your struggles don't matter, having very few positive Asian role models, and every popular Asian guy you see is either making fun of themselves or their race or their heritage. It's easy to understand why so many westernized Asian teens believe they have to humiliate themselves to gain acceptance, and in the process, becoming their own worst enemy and continuing the cycle of hate against Asian men. Now that we have exposed several key factors contributing to the normalization of hate against Asian men, it's time for us to start fighting back. Now, there are strategies that benefit us directly at a personal level, and there are strategies that benefit all Asian men at societal level. We should be doing everything we can because we don't just want to make life better for ourselves. We all know nothing angers racist incels and Aunty Lus more than seeing Asian men do well in life. That's why we all must aspire to become the best version of ourselves. Take some time and reflect on whether you are happy with the person you are right now. And if the answer is no, then figure out why and come up with a plan of action to get you to a better place. Whether that's getting in better physical shape, learning a new skill, or building up your confidence, there is no shortage of quality self-help information on the internet. What's important is we proactively identify which areas of our lives we should be working on, and then dedicate focus, time, and energy towards taking positive actions. Now, in my opinion, we should all learn self-defense and get in excellent physical shape. When I was a skinny fat boy who did not know how to fight, bullies pushed me around all the time, which all stopped once I got muscular and learned how to fight. Most bullies are cowards. They go after people they perceive as easy targets. That's why you must be physically capable of defending yourself and your loved ones. You don't want to be another helpless victim in an anti-Asian hate crime. On a lighter note, getting in excellent physical shape will also do wonders for your confidence, and it's really hard for people to use negative stereotypes against you when you're jacked. That's why I'm topless in my YouTube thumbnails, to combat the negative stereotypical images of Asians. Be the representation you want to see. And of course, support positive representations of Asian men in all areas of life. We must also stop letting people get away with being disrespectful towards us. We are always told to be the bigger man, turn the other cheek. But have you noticed all the challenges we face today are the very same challenges we faced decades ago? How many more decades must we endure before we start advocating for ourselves? And why should we endure while perpetrators of hate face zero consequences? And why are we in the wrong for standing up against people being racist towards us? And why should we allow people to treat us like stereotypes instead of actual human beings? Retaliation is justified, so don't be soft. When you see people being blatantly racist, call them out and give them consequences. When you see self-hating Lus making negative generalizations about Asian men, rebut their nonsense.
Stop blaming Asian men for your internalized racism, because what you're doing is you're holding every single Asian man accountable for the dysfunction that you grew up with.
When self-hating Asians try to defend racism, tell them to have more respect for themselves. When people make racist comments about Asians, use their own logic against them. When people call you a victim for standing against racism, call them a coward for refusing to do so. When people try to gaslight you and pretend the challenges you face don't exist, do not allow them to silence you, and don't wait for other people to fight your battles for you. Be the one to lead the charge. judge. You know, people tell me all the time, you will never change the minds of racists by on them. The point is not to get racists to change their minds. The point is to dismantle their logical fallacies and give them a consequence for being a idiot. The point is to motivate other Asians to stand up for themselves. The point is to let bystanders know racism should never be normalized. That's why we all must fight back to prevent apathy from becoming the status quo. And if Black Americans can win equal rights, if women can win the right to vote, and if Sri Lankans can overthrow the entire government, then surely we Asian men can stop letting people push us around. Now, if you are an Asian in the Western world, stop letting Western society dictate the type of person you should aspire to be. Because if you do, then you are going to end up as another self-hating loser who makes fun of their Asian heritage. Even if you spend your entire life sucking up, some people will still never treat you as an equal.
I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian. We'll get back to that.
So don't mindlessly accept negative messages about yourself. Actively seek out positive Asian role models and never let anyone tell you you are inferior for being Asian. The way to solve any societal problem is first to bring awareness to it. That's why we must be relentless and never allow anyone to silence us. Now, while doing so, it's important we don't get innocents and potential allies caught up in the crossfire. Direct your justified retaliation towards people who deserve it. Yes, fight back against Aunty Lus and their nonsense, but don't allow them to cause you to think negatively about all Asian women. We hate Lus for their hateful actions and words against Asian men, just like we love all the empowering and fantastic Asian women in our lives. Likewise, point out facts like the high rates of Black on Asian crime. But remember, not all Black people are to blame.
What the f? Okay, Kevin?
If we want to be judged as individuals free from negative racial biases, then we should also never judge others purely on the basis of their race. And if we desire to be treated as respectable human beings, then we must also show others respect until they give us a reason not to. And Asian Americans, for the love of all deities, you must put all your trivial hatreds aside and see the bigger picture. By trivial hatreds, I mean things like Korean Americans hating on Chinese Americans, Asian Americans hating on homeland Asians, second generation Asian Americans hating on first generation Asian Americans, or West Coast Asian Americans hating on East Coast Asian Americans. When all Asian men are being targeted, why waste your time and energy hating on other Asians? Why? Just because they are not exactly like you? Can you imagine a Black person saying like, oh, actually, racists don't hate all Black people, just Nigerians? Of course not. It's ridiculous. So why do we do it? Go after people screaming Asians instead. And yes, talking about our challenges does make a difference. People are starting to notice how much Aunty Lus hate Asian men.
But do you understand how you were a contradiction? First you were saying, I'm Asian, I'm strong, I'm Korean. And then you're saying, screw Korean boys.
And that Asian men are constantly emasculated by Western media.
We wanted to take away the stereotype of the Asian male in theater of like being asexual and just not being sexy.
And that racist hate against Asian men is rampant.
People saying that like DNA is ruined, or like, why are you married to some Chinese guy? Or it's actually mind-blowing, and it makes me so sad that like that is something that people genuinely feel and comment, and they think that's okay.
You must have also noticed how differently Asian men are treated in countries where we haven't been dehumanized for over a century. And so my question for you is this: do you think racism and hate towards Asian men would be as normalized as it is today if we hit back every time we got hit instead of turning the other cheek? You know the answer is no. That's why we must all do our part. Fight for a world that judges us by our actions and words and not our racial background.